Welcome everyone. My name is Ewelina Biesiada and I'm a mental health professional. In this masterclass, I will deliver to you sort of like a therapy training so you can help yourself when it comes to addressing your mental health and your internal state. I've worked with a mental health profession for many years and I've worked with many people. What I have learned is that almost every person I have met, if not all of them, I don't want to be very categorical, but the truth is almost everyone I have met suffered with some degree of anxiety or depression, but what is actually the most interesting bit is that they didn't even know it. And I was certainly that case myself. I lived in a constant state of unrest, mentally and within my body. I had bad forms of depression, which I didn't know that's depression. So total lack of interest in life or motivation or total lack of enjoyment or being able to be in the present moment, reminiscing about the past or worrying about the future. So what I'm talking about here is not necessarily a very extreme form of anxiety where you get frequent panic attacks, although that's the case as well. So you can apply what you're going to hear here to things like this. But I'm talking about a general state of not being at your optimal, not being yourself, not feeling yourself, right? So I'm going to deliver this training here for you. So after this training, you will be able to understand yourself deeper, understand your mental health deeper, and understand and know how to actually help yourself and how to be the best support. Because the truth is, therapy should get to the point where you don't need a therapist anymore. So you get the skills to be able to think in a therapeutic way, to be able to support yourself and to be able to understand yourself. For that to happen, obviously, we need to spend some time on exploring our internal experience, exploring our inner world, which we're going to do here, and understanding the relationship between the body and the mind. Because although we use the phrase mental health, anxiety and depression are not mental. They're first and foremost bodily experiences, which I'm going to go into detail about. But so I'm not going to go into the symptoms that much. I'm just going to talk about the broader narrative, broader perspective, so you can actually see a bigger picture and you can understand your experience in a broader context. And I think this is what's missing when we talk about mental health today and when we talk about the internal experience. Because the truth is, as you know, we've never had more knowledge, access to knowledge. We've never had more theories. We've never had more science. We've never had more devices to check our brains, and we've never had more medications, but we are all struggling. The truth is, almost everyone I meet, and you may agree with me, and that includes myself very often, we all lack peace. We all function in a sort of loopy nature on a treadmill. And, you know, I'm talking about people who are doing really well, who are relatively happy, if you ask them. But I'm talking about the internal experience whereby a person, although trying really hard, not wanting to feel the way they feel, and doing everything they want to, they do everything according to the advice that are being given, and still not being able to feel okay and to feel well enough to be able to behave how they want to behave, make choices they want to make, and lead the life they want to lead. Right? So let's try and define depression and anxiety first. So I want you to know that anxiety and depression are the most common human experiences. I've never met anyone professionally or privately, including myself, whereby at some point in life they wouldn't experience something resembling panic attacks, or not being able to stop overthinking or catastrophizing, or the things we normally refer to as symptoms of anxiety. And obviously, extreme form of anxiety is a panic attack. But unless you're having a panic attack, it's very difficult to know how you are and where you are. Obviously, we say, oh, I'm fine, everything is fine. But when you actually think about your inner experience, there's an enormous amount of anxiety, overthinking, worrying, inability to sleep, worrying about the future. Obviously, there are plenty of reasons to do that, for that to happen, actually. But I'm talking about, when I talk about anxiety, I'm talking about this constant state, permanent state of unease, being unsettled in your body and in your mind. And that manifests itself in many different ways, which I'm going to go into details. But being anxious takes a lot of different form, and it's very, very individual. You might not know that. So it takes a lot of different forms. For some people, it takes a form of shutting off from the world. It takes a form of not talking to anyone. And for some people, it's actually oversharing, overcommitting, etc. So inability to feel peace, right? So that would be anxiety. Inability to stop the racing thoughts, stop compulsive behaviors, stop things we do to bring ourselves relief, right? So a constant permanent state of being unsettled and lack of rest, lack of peace internally. So that would be anxiety. When I talk about depression, again, I'm not going to go into extreme forms of depression where someone can't get out of bed in the morning, right? But I'm talking about sort of permanent state of lack of interest in things that used to be enjoyable, or lack of interest in things that you would normally be interested in. So that sort of resignation, right? And obviously in therapy we would be talking about things in a great detail. We would be unpacking the history, unpacking the experiences, and talking about emotions a lot, etc. And that in itself would obviously create a change, hopefully, not always, but that would be the case. But what I want you to learn here is that every person today, and again, unless you go into Tibet and talk to the monks, maybe they're not, but in today's world, we all live in either anxiety state or depression state. Very few people live peacefully these days. And it's not because they have a lot to do. We all have a lot to do, and we all have the same amount of time. It's just that the way we talk about mental health lacks certain detailed narrative and helpful narrative. I don't think the narrative is helpful. This way of working, I have acquired and built this sort of framework over many years. So unless I started talking about anxiety and depression and talking about people, mental health in this way, which you're going to learn, I wasn't able to achieve any lasting change or results for people, or people were not able to achieve, because just talking about your inner experience, it's not enough. It's simply not enough. It is about understanding your version of anxiety and getting the knowledge about what anxiety and depression actually are, right? So, and it's not about overcoming, it's not about managing, it is about understanding what they truly, truly are. Once I started working this way, I've noticed that for a lot of people that was a game changer. For a lot of people that would bring a lot of like self-understanding, empathy, and they would stop judging themselves. It's a self-realization. It is a self-actualization thing where once you learn why you go into anxiety and depression and what is the alternative, because we've normalized this thing, which is you're not supposed to be anxious or depressed. You're not supposed to be running like a headless chicken. You're not supposed to be disinterested in life. You're supposed to be able to be present, feel joy, make good choices. But the whole conversation, right, the narrative now is that, oh, it's normal to be anxious. No, it's not. Or it's normal to be depressed. Of course, there are situations and contexts in which that's a very perfect response. That's a perfect response and the most appropriate response. But I'm talking about the conversation that, when you're going to be told, oh, once you're 45, it's normal to be depressed. It is really not. Because what we are not being taught is how to achieve mental health. We're not. So in the next 40 minutes, I'm going to try and I'm going to deliver to you the understanding I have built over many years and over many, many hours sitting in front of people in sometimes quite a huge distress, and my understanding of how psyche works and how mental health works and how it's all connected. So there you go. I'm going to start by saying this straight away because we don't have much time. So I'm going to start by saying that the reason we suffer is because we don't know how we operate. That's the main reason. We don't know what is causing this. We are being told that this is some random thing, that it's a natural thing to be anxious. It's a natural thing to have panic attacks, or it's a natural thing to be depressed and demotivated and disinterested in life. It's not. So once you learn and once you understand why you get anxious or depressed, that's a proper game changer. When it comes to learning about your mental health, what we need to understand is that mental health is not really mental. We are over-focused, we are obsessed with the brain and the mind, but we are taking it completely out of context of the experience. The mind is the extension of the brain, and the brain is part of the nervous system. And your nervous system is in your body, right? Which, again, for a lot of people, and it was certainly for me, a surprising piece of knowledge. So what we need to understand is that mental health is not mental. It's not some random thing that happens to your brain, or it's not a mind disease, or it's not mind illness. The lack of mental health is the most natural response to what's going on in the world and to the way we live. So we're going to learn about the nervous system, very basic stuff. Then we're going to learn about the mind, how the mind is connected to the nervous system. And then we're going to learn about what we can do about and how we can help ourselves and support ourselves. It's easy, uncomplicated, no long words. I promise you, I'm going to show you how to actually be able to be your best support. Okay? So your nervous system is the master system. I call it the master system. It's the most sophisticated system on the planet. The elements of your nervous system are being copied and mimicked in various devices. So in various devices and different systems outside of your body. But your nervous system is spread all over your body, right? So it's a net of nerves that is interwoven with your bones, muscles, every single organ, your heart, your stomach, everything. Everything is connected to everything. That we need to remember that. And it's unconscious, the way it operates. We don't know how it operates. And you may agree with me that you are not able to control, you don't even know. Unless you attach some kind of device to yourself, you don't know anything about what's going on inside your body. So you don't know about your heartbeat, you don't know about what your liver is doing, your kidneys are doing. So your nervous system is doing all of that for you, right? The nerve cells are called neurons, and they're all over your body, especially in your gut, right? You've got nerve endings absolutely everywhere. And what is the biggest misconception is that we think that everything goes through the brain and we get information to the brain and then to the body, but that's not the case. Actually, a lot of information goes from the body into the brain and into the mind, right? Which mind is an extension of the brain. So that is one of the things that might be quite surprising, but it's really powerful to know that your body is in charge of you. You're not in charge of your body. And your body, your nervous system controls every single life function. You breathe, your digestion, your heartbeat, everything. So your unconscious mind, your unconscious part of your existence is in your body, right? And then your mind and your brain are connected with it. They are the extension of your nervous system. So nervous system is the master system, is your higher intelligence, which governs everything that happens in you, in your mind and in your brain. That's the first bit of powerful knowledge here for you about your mental health. Your mental health is not mental. Your mental health is in your body, right? So then it's not mental, is it, right? So what we have here is your nervous system all over your body. Actually, we now talk about your gut being your second brain. Your heart is a brain on its own, but I'm not going to go into that. It's beyond the scope of this masterclass to be able to discuss this. We're going to focus on the most important elements, right? So your nervous system, then you've got your brain, you've got the biggest nerve in your nervous system is vagus nerve. So that is like a highway. It's the biggest motorway of your nervous system where the information gets transferred, gets sent from your body into your brain. It goes alongside your spine. It's a really sophisticated net of nerves that sort of goes alongside your spine and goes into your head and communicates. And again, everything communicates with everything. It's interconnect everything, right? So we need to remember that. As I said, you don't make decisions for yourself. Your decisions, the life decisions, they're not being made by you. They're made for you by your nervous system. That's why learning about the nervous system is absolutely crucial. And it's life-changing. Once you learn what your nervous system is capable of and how to tap into it and how to take care of it and what are its needs, then we can talk about mental health. Because otherwise, by taking it out of context, nothing is going to happen. No amount of, I would even say, medication, meditation, and all the other things that are being proposed on a thought level are going to address. Because if you're ignoring your nervous system, if you're ignoring your body and the relationship between your body and your mind-body connection, nothing is going to happen. You're going to run into a wall very quickly. And that's why a lot of people, a lot of clients would say to me, and that was certainly myself as well, that, oh my God, I've been doing all these things. I'm trying really hard. And, I'm applying this and I'm doing all these new things and I'm going to the gym, right? But I still get anxious. I still can't sleep, or I'm still depressed and I'm doing everything I can, or I'm still doing these things to myself that are not good for me. I'm drinking, I'm overeating, I'm whatever, shopping, right? This is because we're only addressing things on the level of symptom, on the level of the mind, which is just part of the story, or on the level of the brain. Again, I'm not saying that sometimes the reason isn't in the brain. Of course, people have brain injuries or head injuries. Also, it can be that the main trigger for the anxiety or depression is in the mind, but a majority of the cases, we get anxious or depressed, so we go into survival states because we don't understand what we're doing to our nervous system and what we're doing to our bodies, right? So we don't understand what triggers our body to go into either anxiety or depression, right? We don't understand really the structure of the mental health and where it comes from. So we're addressing this now, which is a very good news. This is all very good news, right? No one is teaching us that. That is not taught at schools. Very few of us have been lucky enough to have parents who are aware of those things. So that thing is not modeled. We don't know. So therefore, it does, as I said at first, it does come from the lack of knowledge about ourselves, right? But the good news is here that you are the person who can address it, right? And it's very specific. So obviously the anatomy of the nervous system is the same in which one of us, but what your nervous system is going to be triggered by is going to be different in comparison to me, which we're going to go into, right? For now, we need to understand that nervous system is everywhere, all over your body. It reads your environment, so it has an ability called neuroception. That's the perception of the nervous system. It literally scans your environment constantly. It just looks for things. So that would be, you have a sense of something is off, or you actually know things before they happen. So your nervous system has eyes all over your body, right? So that's neuroception. And then, obviously, you have your normal perception as well, and you know that information is constantly, you're being bombarded with information. That information can come through your normal perception, but more often than not, it comes from neuroception, from the perception of your nervous system and from your body, and the information then gets fed into your brain and into your mind. So that's the first layer of the experience here. Okay, the neuroception is scanning the environment all the time. Why is that? That's the evolution here, right? You have been equipped with this skill, and it's unconscious by design. You are not meant to know it, right? Because the nature has taken care of this, and you've been equipped with this as the means of survival. So your body is constantly asking a question: is the environment I'm in safe, right? So it's mainly concerned with survival. It doesn't care what you want, what you wish for yourself with your rational, socialized mind. It's the only thing that is concerned with is it safe here? Am I safe or am I in danger? So it's scanning the environment for threats to your survival, right? And this is how we're wired. This is why we get scared so easily, because we are wired for looking for danger, and it's a means of survival. If you didn't have it, you would get killed straight away, because this is the equivalent of you going outside, trying to cross the road and looking around yourself whether there are any cars coming, right? So this is literally an analogy of how your nervous system functions. So it has a thing called neuroception. It reads the environment and then sends the information to your brain through the vagus nerve, right? So obviously I'm oversimplifying this, but that's enough. That's sufficient for us to understand. And depending on what the information is, then the brain goes into certain modes, okay? So the main question here is, am I safe, or can I be relaxed and I don't have to be on guard? That's the main thing here. Very simple. Depending on what is the answer to the question, am I safe, am I not safe, certain things happen. So your nervous system has only 3 ways of responding to the environment and to the information that it gathers, including your brain, obviously, because you can also see the danger, and obviously that cascade of things happens again. What seems to happen is that your nervous system goes either in survival state, so, right, there's some kind of threat, there's some kind of danger, I need to gear up for protection, or I can relax, right? Or I can relax, it's safe to connect, I'm chilled, I can connect with whatever is happening, I'm present, I'm this and that. So what seems to be happening today is that we don't think we're safe, right? We don't think it's actually safe. Reasons for that I'm going to leave for now, but anxiety and depression are the forms of the survival states. There are survival states of your nervous system. I'm going to introduce a symbol for the nervous system. It's called autonomic ladder. Imagine a ladder. The top part of the ladder is green, the middle of the ladder is red, and the bottom of the ladder is grey. So the top, the green colour, represents the state of the nervous system, which is called parasympathetic response, which is called rest, digest, regenerate. So safe and social, safe to connect with the world around you, with yourself, with others. The middle of the ladder is red. This is what's called sympathetic response, where you might have heard it, fight, flight response, right? When you gear up because there's danger, there's some kind of activation. So once the information of danger, of being under threat is being sent to your brain, a part called amygdala gets activated and your frontal lobe gets switched off. I'm going to leave it for now. Obviously, I'm going to go into a lot more detail about that in the course, but for now, we're just going to concentrate on I'm not safe, I am under threat, so I'm going to go into the red mode. I call it the red mode, right? So the middle of the ladder. So fight or flight. So run away or fight your way out of danger. We're just going to keep it simple. And you've got the grey mode, which represents depression here, which is another form of survival mode whereby your response to threat and to danger is not by fighting or fleeing the scene, but it's by hiding. And it's a completely different response in terms of what happens in the nervous system, what happens energy-wise. So in the red mode, energy gets mobilized for action. In the grey mode, where depression happens, where actually there's a collapse of internal resources, you get protected by actually not doing anything. It's an inaction thing, right? They're both survival responses, but they're protective responses, right? So this is how you get out of the situation. And very often, fight or flight is the most appropriate response, right? Because you have to run away from danger. Again, evolution, it's a wonderful gift from evolution, but also very often the most appropriate response is no response, which is depression, right? So I'm not going to go into detail about that, but the top of the ladder is green, where it's safe, where, as I said at the beginning, not a lot of people live like this at the moment, right? So this is the optimal state of safety. And that's it. In terms of your nervous system, obviously I oversimplified it, but I think that's a very sufficient way of looking at it in terms of mental health, because depending on the state in which you find yourself, in which your nervous system actually goes into, right? Everything then changes. There's a cascade of things that happens in each of the states, right? So when you relaxed, so there's no threat, you're chilled, you're safe, and your nervous system thinks like, yeah, this is cool, the people are safe, everything is safe, there's no danger. Children live in that state more often than not. This is a sort of very spontaneous, free state in which you can be yourself, you can laugh, you have access to your emotions, you are hopeful for the future, because one of the rules in the nervous system is that story follows state. So depending on the state you are in, then your narrative in your head, it's an extension of that. So in green, everything is fine, you're hopeful, you can dream about the future, you can be optimistic, positive, etc. Then, if your nervous system decides that you are not safe, right? For some reason, your nervous system in neuroception has decided, and I'm not going to go into detail about that, but has decided that actually you need to gear up for getting out of the situation you are in, and it can be mental situation as well, but that's besides the point. But if the information is being sent to your brain, I'm unsafe, and your amygdala is activated, your fear center, right? And your frontal lobe is going to get switched off, it goes offline, and your frontal lobe, your prefrontal cortex, is responsible for your higher thinking processes. It's called executive function, and this is where you make all your decisions, plan your future, organize things, problem solve, etc., etc. So in the green state, that works optimally. In the red state, in the sympathetic response, fight or flight, that goes offline because you need energy for action, and energy is being drawn from every part of your body where it's not relevant, including your digestion. That would be for people with IBS who basically their nervous system is stressed, so therefore the digestion goes in override, right? So this is what we call stress. So fight and flight gets mobilized for action, for running away or for fighting, right? So what then happens is, again, story follows state. The narrative in your head is going to change. It's very individual. So for some people, it's I'm shit, I'm stupid. They judge themselves, they judge everything. There are a lot of variations here, and obviously this is beyond the scope of this masterclass. But story follows state, which is the most important thing in this. And then that informs the level of energy in your nervous system, will inform what you think and how you think, and will also inform how you behave. And this is where you have flight, fight, freeze, and fawn responses, which are stress responses, right? So again, your choices, what you do and how you think, are going to be determined by the state that you are in. The same way, in the green mode, rest, digest, regenerate, repair, safe and social, you will be thinking, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, actually, yeah, we can do this. We can, or whatever, right? You can rest, you can sleep peacefully, etc. In the red mode, where you've got amygdala activated, where adrenaline and cortisol are pumping through your veins, you are going to behave completely differently, because holding on to all that energy for fighting or fleeing in your body is very uncomfortable, and people deal with it in very different ways. So some people fight, not physically necessarily, sometimes yes, right? Some people flee, so they avoid the situation, they leave the room, they leave the conversation. You know, these are the people who, at any sign of confrontation, they would just flee the scene. Some people get defensive, argumentative. That is about energy in the body and adrenaline and cortisol in the system, right? And again, the narrative in your head when you're in the red will be the typical thing, like this is the symptoms of anxiety, right? Overthinking, worrying about the future, analysis paralysis, inability to be productive, inability to finish tasks, right? And there's a talk now about ADHD being a form of anxiety, and I agree with that. right? So there are a lot of things that happen within the nervous system that we don't know about. But this is your classic anxiety where you, as I said, you get on this loop of anxious thinking, right? And you think it's your personality. But if you lived in the red mode, if you lived in fight and flight, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get panic attacks when you're living anxiety. It doesn't mean, because you are incredibly resilient. So you probably coped really well with this. You cope with challenges, with stress, etc. But at what cost? So you might not even know, right? You might not even know. You might think, oh, I was always like that, because it comes with overcommitting, inability to say no. That's people pleasers. Or people who are in functional freeze. Actually, in the course I talk about the 4Fs. So what are the types of behaving and thinking? So it's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? So people who are in freeze, they have all this energy, they're very anxious, they don't know it, but they call themselves lazy. They're they go in loops, they stop and start tasks, they can't be productive, they can't rest. When you're in the red mode, you cannot rest, right? You constantly need to be doing something. Obviously, sleep problems, right? That's, again, cortisol and adrenaline in your body constantly. So that's the red mode. So as I said, the narrative in your head will be different, and also the choices you're going to make and what you're going to do. What I want to say at this point is that when you're in one of the survival modes, it's extremely difficult to do things that are good for you, to make good choices. Why is that? Because it's very difficult to even think and plan the future. So what happens now? What happens with this in this state, in the red mode? That energy that you're holding on to is very uncomfortable. The energy for action is very uncomfortable. So your nervous system will be looking to soothe itself. So overeating, overspending, drinking, and a lot of other things, behaviorally speaking, are nothing more than ways in which your nervous system is trying to find relief from the energy, because it does bring relief from the energy. Because if your stomach is full, then your body will be like, yeah, this is comfort, I'm going to now focus on digesting the food, for example. That's why it's very difficult not to overdo things when you're in survival modes. And then another thing, the next thing I want to talk about is the grey mode, right? So it's the opposite to red mode, right? So it's down mode is where depression resides in your nervous system. There's very little energy in your system, because to be able to hide and to be able to be invisible and to be able to deal with stress or with danger, surviving by not taking action, right? So then there's very little energy present in your system, including for digesting food, etc. So it's very easy to put on weight. Again, physiologically speaking, everything slows down, and it can slow down to the extreme, as we know. Story follows state. So the narrative in your head will be the extension of the grey mode, of the sort of collapse of your inner resources. So mentally, you will be, again, it's very different for everyone. There are some groups of people, obviously, categories, but generally speaking, one of the most profound things is numbness. You numb. You may be having people telling you that they love you, but you're not going to be able to feel anything. You may get all the help, but you're not going to be able to engage by design, because your nervous system has decided, if your nervous system has decided that depression is the safest option for you, you're not going to be able to engage. right? So understanding that these things come from higher thinking, like higher intelligence and the nervous system, is the key thing, right? And again, in depression, when you can't feel anything, you will do stuff to start feeling something. That's why very often people who are depressed, if they gather a bit of energy or they summon a bit of energy, very often is, drugs, drinking or whatever, or some kind of, we think of it as a reckless behavior. It's for them to feel something, because you are a human being, so you want to feel something. You still have those needs that are being unmet, right? So behaviors in survival modes are nothing less, nothing more, but ways in which you either meeting your needs or finding relief, or meeting your needs or finding relief from the energy, right? And as I said, when you're in green, you behave completely differently, and you are making different choices, and you're thinking completely differently. And there are 3 states of the nervous system, and that's it. It's not your personality, it's not your genes, because environment is everything when it comes to human beings, right? Yes, there are some tendencies, but environment determines, your experience and your environment determines what state your nervous system is in. So by nature, by definition, by design, that's the case. And from those states, then mental health is determined, because mental health is an extension of the state your nervous system is in. Your ways of thinking are literally embodied in the state of the nervous system, and depending on the state, that's your narrative. Addressing your mental health and focusing on the mental part of the experience of the mental health. So focusing on the symptom in terms of thinking, what goes on in your head, in your mind, it's really pointless. You will run into a wall very often, and at the same time we are being told that this is because our brain is not working properly, or this is because of that, or this is random. It's not random. Mental health is not random, and mental health is being taken out of the context. So in the training, I address all of this, and I build a bigger picture for you, and you build a bigger picture for yourself. You also construct a profile, very unique profile that you have, right? So we have the ladder, then I teach you how to move up and down the ladder. So what causes you to go into survival modes? Obviously, I can't determine everything, but I teach you stuff about your nervous system, what it needs, right? Because it's not what we think it needs. The intensity with which we're living, it's really triggering for our nervous system, and how to teach your body peace and what your body likes. And because then once you address and learn and teach your body how to be peaceful, how to go into the green mode, how to go into, and what actually you need, and it's very specific and very unique to you. So things that will be calming for you may be annoying to me, and the other way around. It's all very good news. We need to remember that the saddest part is the best news. So the sad part is we all, majority of us, live in the state of survival, but you are the person who can do something about this. And this training teaches you how, in a proper, non-complicated, non-complex way, without labels, without theories. It's all based around everyday experience. So then once you learn that and you have access to this, because this training you will have access for life to this, you can ask me questions, you can send me emails, then you can have a comprehensive, unique way that you can apply to yourself and address your mental health, or lack of it rather, at any point you want. Right? So it's not dependent on whether you have access to therapy or whether you need to read a book, right? You can listen to it on the go. It's listening only. There are a couple of attachments there just if you need them, but it's listening only. It's working on your perspective, on your mindset, on your understanding of your nervous system. And you can also tweak it according to your needs. So once you learn to be in the green mode, when you teach your body peace and calm, right, you can then do anything you want with your life, because you will remove the anxious experience. It actually dissolves, right? Because once you understand why your nervous system goes into those states and how to get out of them, then the symptoms, right, the symptoms that we talk about, on the basis of which we diagnose anxiety and depression, they dissolve, right? They disappear. So then you can be the parent you want to be, you can be the friend you want to be, you can be your best friend and your best support, right? So I invite you to get the course. It's based in the philosophy of positivity, that you have everything you need in order to really address and coach yourself and train yourself to understand yourself. It's a skill that we don't practice. Not only no one teaches us how to, but we don't practice these things. In today's world, it's extremely difficult to actually know, not to be confused, right? What we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing, or how we should be thinking about certain things. It shouldn't be difficult to be a human being. You shouldn't be anxious or depressed. You shouldn't be struggling with normal everyday things, right? So, yeah, see you in the course.